Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
This is Trust Your Doctor, that podcast found on 17 DVD extras, because this week we watched Blink,
Written by Stephen Moffat.
directed by Hetty McDonald.
And aired on June 9th, 2007.
Yeah, so the doctor-lite episode of the season. Stephen Moffat apparently didn't have a lot of time. He was like, I'll just write this thing really quickly and then just turn it in and be done.
Well, I mean, that's kind of a surprise considering this is based on a story that he previously wrote and is an improvement on that story and an improvement and far cry from Love and Monsters.
Yeah, well.
Not that that's hard, but this was actually really good.
Well, I mean, whoever wrote Love and Monsters clearly had, clearly didn't put together a good episode. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, who wrote Love and Monsters?
Oh, I don't remember. I don't think it really matters, actually. Yeah, so Stephen Moffat was like, writing Blink was such a short time period over my whole career, I just completely forgot that I did it. And I was like, right, yeah, sure, your most acclaimed episode, you just forgot that you did it. Yeah, I believe that.
Well, this is based on a story that Stephen Moffat wrote for the Doctor Who annual that we sort of reviewed or, read a while back.
For the 9th Doctor retrospective episode, yeah.
Which was what was that called?
It's called What I Did on My Christmas Holidays by Sally Sparrow.
Yeah, so this is a retooled version of that that incorporates more stuff to increase the length of the story. Turns Sally Sparrow into a young adult, I guess, instead of a kid.
Mm-hmm. Removes the concept of an essay that she's writing for class.
Well, they have the script thing, which is a better execution of that same thing, in my opinion. And they also include the Weeping Angels, who are pretty cool.
Yeah.
So it's basically just an all-around improvement on that story.
Hang on to that feeling of the Weeping Angels being cool, because once Stephen Moffat takes over, he brings them back so much, he basically butchers them as villains. So,
well, I mean, they're his, so I can understand why he wants to use them. But yeah, I guess they just, like we mentioned before we started recording this, they just fall into that segment of villains who are just brought back so much that they don't even feel scary anymore, like the Daleks.
Yeah, but the Daleks then went on like a hiatus for a while, and they came back in the reboot, and they were scary again. Yeah,
well, the Daleks, see, the thing is, for villains that they bring back, once a season or, just a lot, they're only scary again when they do something new with them, like Davros, for example, or some of the new stuff, I guess, that they brought in with Dalek, like the Doctor being similar to the Daleks. And that sort of made them, pretty menacing. But other than that, they were just lame.
But you can introduce new things and have it be not so great, as we'll see the next time the Weeping Angels come back.
Well, they were good in this, and that's all that matters right now, I guess.
Anyway, it begins with
Sally Sparrow.
Yeah, how does it begin?
It begins right with Sally Sparrow. I think she walks into the abandoned mansion.
Oh yeah, she tears off the wallpaper, and it's like,
which is again from the short story. Although this time she's not just tearing off her grandma's wallpaper or whatever it was. She's just investigating this mansion, I guess.
She's tearing off the wallpaper in this supposedly abandoned house.
She never explains what she's doing there. I mean, you can just assume that she's investigating it, I guess.
She says later on that she likes old things. They make her sad. And then Kathy's like, why is that a good thing? She's like, I don't know. Sadness is happiness. And I was like, what are you saying?
She says sad is happy for deep people.
I was like, what are you saying?
But anyway, she tears off. She sees something written under the wallpaper. A bit of it is torn off. She's like, what's that? So she tears the rest of it off. And it says something along the lines of, duck, Sally Sparrow. No, really, duck. Right now. Love the Doctor. It doesn't say love, it just says the Doctor.
Yeah, she ducks in this.
Your good pal, the Doctor.
This statue bus comes flying through the room, and it looks like it's on a trajectory that wouldn't have even brought it close to Sally Sparrow at all, but she ducks anyway.
Looked like it would have hit her to me. I didn't notice anything weird about
it. Looks way, way off of where she's standing. But she ducks, and then she looks around, and
she sees
a statue.
A statue outside of an angel with its face covered by its hands.
Yeah. And she's like, huh, that's kind of weird. And then she tears off the wallpaper that says, signed the doctor or whatever, and then the title sequence plays.
And so then she goes over to her friend's house, I guess. I mean, I got some lesbian vibes from these two. I don't know if that's true or not, but
Well,
you know.
I mean, that'd be kind of weird for Sally then. For when Kathy disappears, she's like, well, I guess I'll start dating her brother then.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that was just me. So, in hindsight, probably was. Also, what's her face gets a husband in Kathy in 1920.
I mean, you can be bisexual.
Yeah, all right, sure.
That's
yeah,
an option. Option's not the right word, but anyway, her name is Kathy, and she's a close friend of Sally, and Sally goes over and calls Kathy, and she's like, why are you calling me so early? And she's like, I'm in your kitchen making coffee. And Kathy's like, what the heck, man? What the heck?
And she sees Kathy's brother, who had a name that I don't remember.
Larry.
Larry.
I knew it started with an L.
And he walks by naked, and he's like, just, I'm pretty sure the answer is no here, but am I wearing pants?
Yeah, so he's probably smashed or hungover, one of the two. It's 1 a.m, could be either. Sally's like, yeah, that's kind of weird. And Kathy's like, yeah, so what are you doing here, Sally? And then she sees that Sally's in great distress.
We didn't mention that when Sally walks in, she sees a bunch of screens, all with the doctor's face on them.
Yeah.
And she sort of just writes that off, she doesn't know who the doctor is. But we do, and, this was the start of, I thought this story did a good job of really setting up the mystery. So not only do we have the horror stuff with the weeping angels, which was already established in the very first scene, I guess, It's also like this cool mystery. And even having read the Sally Sparrow story, I didn't really know. I kind of knew where it was going, but there were still some twists and surprises.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I watched this, I had no idea what was going on at all.
This is one of the few Doctor Who stories just ever, I think, that sort of kept me guessing.
Mm-hmm.
There are other stories where you're like, what's going on? But then they either reveal it or they inadvertently ended up revealing it, early on. But this one did sort of kept me guessing.
Yeah.
And this actually, I guess this is a good time to mention this, but I think, if I had to introduce Doctor Who to someone who had never watched it and never really, knew what it was about or anything about it, I might show them this episode, Yeah,
I actually strongly disagree with that. A lot of people say Blink is a perfect first episode, and I strongly disagree, because this episode is nothing like the rest of the show.
Yeah, exactly. So I was also thinking that, and I was like, yeah, this is nothing like any other Doctor Who episode. So I show them this first, and then another episode to sort of demonstrate what the show is actually like. But the thing is, if you don't know what the TARDIS is, then it's a big reveal that's the Doctor's time machine, and that's so cool, in my opinion.
I don't know. See, I wouldn't show it to someone because it's nothing like the rest of Doctor Who.
Yeah, it's not representative, but it's just that part just lands so well, the reveal that the TARDIS is the time machine. If you don't know already.
Yeah, but at the same time, to me, part of the reason why this episode is a good episode of Doctor Who is because it's nothing like the rest of them. And I feel like if you showed this to someone who's never seen the show before, they're going to have this notion of what Doctor Who is, and then it's just going to be completely shattered by every other episode ever made of Doctor Who.
Yeah, which is why I'd show them this and then something else. I don't know.
I mean, I'd probably show them something like Rose first and then show them this, so that they actually know what the show is before they see this episode. I just strongly disagree that this is a good first episode to show someone, because I just think that it doesn't introduce them to the show well.
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't demonstrate anything about Doctor Who, basically. I just like that reveal that you would get if you don't know that the TARDIS is the time machine. This also could be, this could be a standalone story. This doesn't necessarily even rely on the Doctor, the TARDIS, or any pre-established Doctor Who related stuff. Just replace the Doctor in this with just a time traveler, and it's basically the same thing. It could be a standalone thing.
You could just show it to someone as a standalone thing, I guess. I just don't think it would work if you wanted to actually introduce them to what Doctor Who is and if you wanted to get them to watch the show. Just because I don't think that if they watch this, they'd actually have any notion of the show. They'd want
Yeah,
to watch. They'd
you'd
want to watch something like this again, and then they'd just be disappointed.
Yeah, you'd be misleading them completely, which is why you'd need to show them something along with this. But yeah. And I mean, like we mentioned when we talked about the short story version of this, this story is actually a lot more. It uses time travel to a far greater degree than any previous story, which is weird because this is like what, episode 800 something. And it's the first time that they've really actually used time travel as something more than just a means to get somewhere. I mean, they've done stuff with it before, but nothing to this extent.
I mean, there was the chase, where the entire plot of the story was they were chasing the Daleks through time.
No, I mean, it's not like they've just used it as like a way to get to a certain point or a certain place or whatever. They've done more with it, but still, I think nothing to this extent.
Yeah, I guess.
Anyway, what happens next?
Well,
Sally and Kathy go
to
the next
house.
day. They go to the mansion and they're like, "Yeah, this is kind of weird." So Sally shows Kathy, I think, the message. She's like, "How could there be a message to me here telling me to duck?"
Kathy's also got some really bad dialogue when they get to the mansion, which is like, Sally and Kathy, girl investigators. And I was like, what? And Kathy's like, Sparrow and Nightingale totally works. And I'm like, all right, just drop it, Kathy. This joke is not landing for Sally. Sally is not amused right now. Just drop it.
Sally's not ever amused. It seems as if she's just, I don't know. Does she even smile at all in this?
Yeah, at the end.
At the end.
I mean, it'd be pretty distressing if you were just in an abandoned house and found your name written on the wall.
I mean, I would laugh, especially if I almost died, a few seconds later.
Oh, she also smiles and laughs at what's his name? Life is short and you are hot guy.
Oh yeah, what was that guy's name?
Billy. His name is Billy.
Oh yeah, Billy Shipton.
And yeah, so she shows Kathy the message on the wall, and the doorbell rings, and Sally's like, "What the hell?"
We get some more creepy shots of the weeping angels.
Mm-hmm.
And Sally goes to answer the door, and Kathy stays behind for some strange reason.
Yeah,
she says, "In case something happens." Yeah, I don't know why.
I think Kathy's like, "Oh, it could be a burglar," and Sally's like, "I don't think burglars ring the doorbell."
No, you'd be surprised. I don't know if you'd be surprised.
They're called pyramid schemes. Anyway. So Sally goes to open the door, and there's this guy there, and then we get...
It's Turlo. No, I'm just kidding.
We get the one
guy
thing...
looks strangely like an older...
He does, actually.
Turlo.
I was trying to place what he looked like when I was watching the episode, but you've hit the nail on the head for me now. Yeah, it looks like an older version of Turlo.
Who played Turlo? Mark Strickland or Mike Strickland? Mark. All right, yeah. I don't know what else he's in, but...
Well, he
grab any British show from the 80s, maybe.
Yeah, probably. Anyway, I was gonna say this is my one problem with this episode is that this dialogue now and the letter itself all sounds directly just straight lifted from Back to the Future. As the guy's like, "I made a promise to someone a long time ago to be here at this exact moment to give you this letter," and I'm like, wait a minute, this is the end of Back to the Future too.
But done better, honestly.
No, I think it's done about the same or even worse, really. You only think it's done better because there's that reveal that Kathy then disappears at that moment after Sally gets the letter, whereas
and also
Back to the
it's
Future, Doc disappeared before.
But I mean, it's her grandson. This guy is Kathy's grandson, because what happens to Kathy right now is she gets zapped back in time to 1920 by one of the weeping angels, and she made her grandson promise to deliver this letter to Sally at this time, explaining what happened to her.
I mean, I don't have a problem with the plot point itself so much as the fact that the dialogue and the letters sound basically the same as the dialogue in Back to the Future. Like, the fact that the plot point is basically the same, that doesn't bother me, because like we've said so many times on the show before, people steal things. But the fact that the dialogue and the content of the letters sound like they're worded exactly the same, that's what bothers me. Because it's like... couldn't you even write your own version? Couldn't you just come up with something else that they could say, Stephen? Because then she reads the letter, and the letter basically starts off with, "If I've done my math correct, you should arrive. This should arrive just moments after I've been zapped back in time." And I'm like, what? It's exactly how the letter in Back to the Future 2 starts.
Well, I mean, right? That doesn't really bother me. All the greatest writers in history have directly stolen things and basically never written an original thought in their lives. So,
I mean, yeah, like I said, you can still plot points, but just directly lifting the dialogue just seems really lazy to me.
Yeah, all the greatest writers in history have just directly lifted.
Yeah, it just seems really lazy to me.
Yeah, it is. Anyway, it's not just a letter, it's a letter and pictures.
Yeah, there's pictures of Kathy and Sally's like, "Is this some sort of sick joke?" And the guy's like, "No, what? No. I don't understand." Poor guy.
So she throws down the letters and goes looking for Kathy, but, she's not there, obviously.
Yeah, she finds the Weeping Angels upstairs, and one of them's holding the TARDIS key, so she takes it out of their hands. My problem with this episode, which is only evident upon rewatching the episode, is that the Weeping Angels are kind of inconsistent in how they work. They seem to, like right now when Sally Sparrow is alone upstairs, she's clearly blinking, looking at the angels, and they don't move at all. Yeah,
there's some weird things. I mean, the points where they're not supposed to be blinking, they obviously are, occasionally. And, there are times when it seems as if nobody's looking at the angel, yet it's not moving.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's because we're looking at it. Maybe that's the point of that. Not the point, but maybe that's that. What that end thing is with the statues. Like we're looking at the angels, so it's not moving. I don't know.
I mean, I've heard that theory before about this episode, and I don't know if I strictly buy it.
Yeah, I don't buy it, but
I don't know. It's just, I mean, it's not really bad because it doesn't detract from the enjoyment of the story. It's just odd to me that like Sally Sparrow's alone on the second floor landing, and the Weeping Angels don't just zap her back in time right there, because they obviously have the opportunity to do so, but they don't for some reason.
Yeah. I mean, so, I don't know. I was trying to think of any way it might all fall into their master plan not to do so, but then again, they can't even control when they're frozen and when they're not, so, whatever.
No, but they're clearly unfrozen if nobody's looking at them, and Sally's only looking at the Weeping Angel she grabs the key from, and there's that angel to the right of her who just doesn't move.
Yeah.
For some reason.
Yeah, it is kind of weird.
Anyway, she grabs the TARDIS key out of the angel's hand, and she doesn't know what it is, but she takes it anyway. She kind of just
always a good idea.
I mean, I do that when I'm walking my dog and I find something cool on the side of the road. I'm like, hey, I'm going to pick this up. I found a medal the one time I was walking my dog. I was like, what? So that's the coolest thing I found walking my dog, I guess.
Wow, you want a medal? Just kidding.
Yeah. You want a medal?
Medal for finding a medal. Anyway.
Redundancy.
Sally.
She goes back downstairs and she picks up the letter and she tries to chase after the guy, but he's already gone.
Yeah. And Kathy's last request in the letter is to tell her brother what happened. So she goes to the DVD store where the guy works.
And to tell him that she loves him.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, it was just that. It wasn't to tell him what happened. But Sally does eventually tell him what happens. She goes to the DVD store and finds the brother.
Well, so she goes back.
She meets the guy who's manning the front of the store, who's just watching a movie.
Yeah. And she goes to the back, and there's the doctor on the screen again. He's like,
He's sort of having half a conversation, and Sally starts talking to the screen as if he knows what she's... As if the doctor can communicate with her, although it's just a recording.
Mm-hmm.
Although it actually does seem in this moment like they're communicating.
Yeah, and Sally's
which is actually, I guess, weird. Just a coincidence based on what happens later.
Yeah. Sally's like, well, that's weird. And then Larry's like, oh, yeah, he always says that. He's on like these random 17 DVDs. It's an Easter egg. And she's like, oh, okay, that's kind of weird. And he's like, yeah, don't worry, I'll get a list for you. And she's like, oh, yeah, by the way, your sister says she loves you. He's like, oh, God. Did something happen? Sally's like, no, she's perfectly fine.
She just tells her that she went away for work for an extended period of time.
Forever.
Or something. Forever. Yeah, and Larry, I guess, is not overly concerned. He's too busy obsessing over, the doctor found on these 17 unrelated DVDs.
Yeah, and then Sally's like, huh, weird. And by the guys and you mean the internet, right? Larry's like, Don't know why he seems so hesitant, I guess, to admit that
he has no friends, and that he's a loser who works a dead-end job at a DVD store.
It seems like a pretty chill job. He just kind of works in the back. He doesn't really seem to be doing anything. I mean, the store looks like it's going under since it doesn't look like they've had a customer in years, but kind of looks like he just chills in the back and doesn't do anything.
Yeah, seems like a pretty good deal. You know, work there for a couple months until they close doors and then find a new job. But anyway, he's not that important for another 20 or so minutes.
Yeah, because Sally now... Well, so Larry gives her a list of all the DVDs, and Sally's like, okay, cool. And she's leaving.
This was actually pretty funny. She leaves, and I guess she's about to just drop it all and go home, and she hears the guy in the front talking to himself, I guess, as he watched the movie. He's like, God, go to the police. Why doesn't anyone ever go to the police? And she's like,
I mean, police. Same, dude. Every time I'm watching a movie, just go to the police. Anyway.
Yeah, a lot of movies could just be resolved within like 10 minutes if the characters actually just, went to the police or did anything realistic.
Yeah.
But, oh well. Anyway, she does. She goes to the police.
The guy's like...
The guy doesn't... She tells them the story about how Kathy, I guess, went back in time and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he obviously doesn't believe it. But we get a creepy shot of the weeping angels outside. So Kathy looks out the window. You see the angels across the street on some building.
This is another angels moving inconsistently thing because later on when she's in the hospital, she sees them again across the road and she blinks and then they disappear. And I'm like, there has to be like dozens of people on the street down below, right? There has to be at least a couple people looking at these statues at any given moment, right? The same thing happens when Moffat brings back the Weeping Angels way later and turns the Statue of Liberty into a Weeping Angel.
Wow, and then spoiler. It's like... Well, I guess it was in the ending.
It's
Possibly. I don't remember.
There are thousands of people watching the Statue of Liberty at any given moment. It would never get an opportunity to move.
But there is that... It is pretty cool. I think there's a creepy shot of them, like... You cut to this shot of you looking into the window at... Sally and the Weeping Angels are sort of hidden from her view and they're outside the building.
Mm-hmm.
And that was pretty neat, I guess. They do this again, but this is the first time it shows up, where they zoom in on Sally's face and have her blink really slowly.
They do Except it with
it's
Billy.
Obviously not they do it with Billy. It's obviously not a slow motion thing. It's just her, closing her eyes slowly and opening them again slowly. So it looks kind of lame and...
Yeah, I was going to say, not sure if that looks better than really garbage slow motion or not. Not sure what would have been better. But yeah, Detective Inspector Billy shows up, Billy Shipton. And he's like, I've got a meeting in very important... Never mind. Hey, the receptionist, tell that guy I'll be late for that thing. I think he actually says, tell him I'll be late for that thing. She's like, okay.
Guy just forgot his lines. Yeah, I think Billy, he's interested in the story when he finds out that Sally was at the abandoned mansion because he has a garage full of cars that were just left at that mansion.
Yeah. He takes her down to the garage and she's like, huh, neat, I guess.
It's like some of them were left, with the engine on. People just disappear when they go to that mansion.
And there's also the police box there. And
yeah.
He's like, this is the pride of our collection.
Yeah, apparently someone just abandoned a police box at that mansion. Who would do such a thing?
And she's like, what's a police box?
Yeah, I think we've talked about this, at least a couple times. Do people in Britain today, like maybe people our age, so like in their early 20s,
mm-hmm.
even know what a police box is? I mean, maybe because of Doctor Who, maybe because Doctor Who is such a big cultural icon.
Right.
But I mean, do people who don't follow the show or just don't know anything about it, how much do people know about police boxes, or like, do people know they were a thing? I don't know. I still don't know.
Yeah, do people know they were a thing outside of Doctor Who, or do people see a police box on the side of the road and go, "Hey, that's that thing from Doctor Who"?
Well, I mean, are there still any on the side of the road other than the ones they keep up for tourists? I guess.
I honestly don't know.
I don't know. I mean,
You've been to
I've
England.
been to England twice.
I haven't,
so.
Except for stopping over in London Heathrow. That counts, right? Seeing the inside of the airport counts, right?
Anyway, there's a interesting line. Billy says that it doesn't look anything like a police box from the 60s or 50s or whatever. He says the windows are the wrong size, and there are a couple other things that are the wrong size. I think this is the first time we've gotten that information that it's sort of off.
Yeah, except the TARDIS prop in the 60s and 70s was completely different to this one and actually kind of looked more accurate. So that's... they never explain the, like, exterior of the TARDIS changing appearance. They all kind of just roll with it as if it's hasn't changed at all, which is probably for the best, actually.
Well, isn't that drastic? I mean, if you watch, like, the first or second Doctor's era, it's obviously going to look far different than how it looks now, but I think the changes were gradual enough that I didn't notice it, at least, just watching one story a week for the past 3.5 years. Four and a half, actually. 4 years 4 years, basically.
The change from the David Tennant TARDIS to the Matt Smith TARDIS is, like, not actually that big, but you'd, like, really notice it because they changed the color of the exterior paint, which is, like, a really noticeable change.
Yeah, it's kind of strange, especially since there's obviously like a standard color for these things, but
for these things,
yeah, for police boxes. Anyway, Billy
tells her that he's off duty and he wants to take her out for a drink because life is short and she is hot. And she's like, "Wow, you're very forward, Billy." And he's like, "Yeah, well, life is short." And she's like, "Okay, I'll give you my number." And he's like, "Oh, good. What's your name?" She's like, "Sally Shipton." I mean Sparrow. And then she's like really embarrassed and laughs and leaves. And he's like, "I'm going to call you tomorrow, maybe even tonight. Definitely going to call you." She's like, "Don't look at me. No, don't look at me."
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't necessarily enjoy the romantic aspects of Doctor Who. I mean, here it was all right, I guess, because, again, it actually ties into the episode itself. It was just a small thing. Well, also, and it's not Martha.
They're not, like, in love or anything. He's just, like, playfully flirting with her, and she's like, "Okay, we'll get a drink or something sometime." Yeah. It's not like they met each other and they're, like, madly in love with each other. Madly in love with each other.
But anyway, I guess none of that really matters because Billy turns around and sees the Weeping Angels. They're sort of reaching for the TARDIS, it seems like. He's like, "Huh, that's really weird." So he looks away and he gets zapped back into 1969.
Oh, yeah, we've got to mention that Billy told Sally that ordinary Yale lock on the TARDIS, but no key fits.
Yeah.
They don't have a key that fits. Then I wrote a note, "Hey, remember that time in the Daleks when Susan was like, if you put the lock has like 3,000 wrong entries, if you put it down the wrong one, it seals the lock forever." Remember that plot point?
No, I don't remember that at all, actually.
Completely dropped.
Yeah, that's why I don't remember it. Because it never showed up again.
And I was like, lock would be completely useless right now because of all the keys that the police department's tried. Anyway.
But thankfully, almost everyone forgot about that.
Except for me. So,
anyway, yeah, I think we get a bit back in 1969. Billy zapped back into some alleyway or something.
It looks like a subway line, and it honestly looks like the BBC called up David Tennant and Freema, what's her name? I don't want to try to pronounce her last name because I know I'm going to butcher it, and I don't know how to pronounce it correctly. But they called them up and were like, "Hey, meet us in the subway line. We've got to film this thing for this episode," because that's really the only thing that they filmed for this episode, except for the DVD extra.
Yeah.
Oh, and the end, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, the Doctor says some things about his timey-wimey detector that goes ding when there's stuff.
Yeah, he doesn't really reveal what's going on. He tells Billy in sort of semi-cryptic language, I guess, what the Weeping Angels are. They zap people back in time, and they somehow feed off the energy that's released based on the amount of time they would have lived in their own era. Yeah. They're not living in their own era. I don't know what that even means, but
they feed off of the potential energy. They basically, when they send you back in time, they feed off of the life potential, the life you could have had that they took away from you.
Yeah, that part was kind of lame to me, but it didn't really factor into anything that happens other than, just the Weeping Angels' motivation for wanting to get the TARDIS. I feel bad
for Billy, because Billy meets the Doctor, and then the Doctor basically just uses him to get back to the TARDIS. He never actually does anything for Billy. He just tells Billy he's gonna have to wait 40 years in the past and deliver this message. And there's no reason why Billy should do it for the Doctor. There's no reason why he should follow the Doctor. But Billy is clearly the nicest guy who's ever been on Doctor Who because he does it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Billy living out the rest of his life from like 1969 to 2007 is something that shouldn't have happened, right? So I don't see the Doctor has said multiple times that he doesn't meddle in things that like should happen, or I don't know what the exact terminology is, but feels like here that the Doctor could have just brought him back. Once he got hold of the TARDIS again, just gone back and fixed things for Billy and potentially Kathy.
But then he probably would have made some excuse about crossing his own timeline or some garbage.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Just that part wasn't that bad, but again, like, to me, the part that was the worst about all of this was that he tells Billy when he's gonna die, like just revealing people's deaths to them. Isn't that sort of unethical? But
and also, how would the Doctor even know? Oh, I guess Sally would have written it down in the notebook. Let's just say, how would the Doctor know without going to the future?
He just shows up in the TARDIS, and that seems like, so he did die.
It's like watching through the hospital window across the street. Good thing I confirmed this information before I used it.
Good thing I confirmed this after I prophesied it.
Anyway, Sally gets a call from a guy, and she's like, "What? Where are you?" And he's like, "No, hospital." Well, he doesn't. We don't hear him say that, but we find out because then we cut to Sally in the hospital, which just looks like the corner of the BBC offices with beds in it.
Before that, doesn't she realize that the key is the key to the TARDIS? She runs back to the TARDIS, but nothing's there, and then she gets the call.
Yeah. Yeah, then she goes to the hospital, which just looks like an office that they put beds in. It doesn't look hospital-like at all. Like, the only thing that denotes it being a hospital is all the beds in it. It's got like a carpeted floor.
Anyway, it's Billy, and he's an old man now.
Yeah, and he apparently married another girl also named Sally. That was kind of weird.
Yeah, it was.
Not sure if that was just a coincidence. Or... Oh, we forgot to mention that Kathy married the first dude that she saw in 1920.
Yeah, we skipped that entire scene where she meets this guy, and she's like, where am I? I was just in London. He's like, no, this is Hull. She's like, no, it's actually London. He's like, nope, it's Hull. He starts following her, and that's who she gets married to.
Yeah, we never see how their love blossoms from him following her, walking through the field. But it happens, I guess.
Or not. We don't know that.
Stuck in a loveless marriage.
We don't know anything about them.
We don't know anything about love.
Kathy and that guy spin off when...
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Big Finish just announced a spin-off with a character who appears in one David Tennant special, who wasn't even all that interesting, really. But anyway. Not the Doctor, I was going to say Sally and Billy. Billy dies, but he tells Sally to figure out, what's the commonality between all the DVDs on the list. He also reveals that he was the one who put those extras on the DVDs.
Yeah, he got into publishing, and eventually that led him to get into DVD publishing. He's like, I put in these extras of the Doctor
somehow,
so that you would see them. Yeah,
because Larry said he called the manufacturers and they don't even know that they're on the DVD, and he called all the movie publishers and they don't know that they're on the DVD either. So I'm not really sure.
Billy just sneaking them on somehow.
Yeah. Anyway,
I guess he had enough power to do that.
He says something like, life is long and you are still hot, and then he dies. He's like, it was raining when we met, and she's like, it's the same rain. And I'm like, how did you not realize it was the same rain, Billy?
Maybe he did, and he just wanted to have a cool sounding line, and Sally just threw a wrench in it.
Sally figures out that the list of DVDs is the list of DVDs she owns, and she calls Larry, and Larry's like, you only own 17 DVDs.
That's a pretty normal amount. That's actually, I think... slightly more than average, possibly.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what this story was trying to imply. Like, if you own 17 DVDs, you don't own enough, or what?
You own too many, or...
Anyway, so she has him bring a portable DVD player to the abandoned house. I'm not sure why she decides to go watch these things in the abandoned house. That's a questionable decision if I've ever heard one, but...
Yeah, maybe, I don't know, maybe it was halfway between the hospital and the DVD store. I don't know.
That abandoned house looks like it's in the country, like it's like way out of the way.
They actually tell you where it is. I don't know if this is a real location, but there's an address for it. I don't know if the address is fake or if it actually exists or what, but whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
They decide to do it at the mansion. Just a pretty bad idea. But so she watches the doctor's sort of recorded speech, and this time he's actually replying to her. Or somewhat. Because she's having the conversation with him, and finally, at least to Larry, the conversation makes sense. So this conversation with Sally is like the missing other side of this conversation, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And then he's like, oh God, this is amazing. I have to write this down. The people on the forums won't believe this or whatever.
Yeah, so he's writing it down, and then she's like, how can you know what I'm saying? And the doctor's like, look to your left. She looks, and Larry's like, yeah, I never understood that line. Like, is it a metaphorical left? And Sally's like, you dense
he's like,
block of lead.
I think it's a political statement.
He's like, you dense block of lead. It's you. You're writing my answers down, aren't you? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, Larry.
So the doctor's reading off of this transcript of the conversation, which is sort of mind-bending.
It's bootstrap paradoxy. Because who created the transcript originally? Because Larry's transcript is a printout of the video.
Of what the doctor's going to say, and the doctor knows what to say based on the transcript.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then he talks about the angels, and she's like, Larry, watch that statue. And then at the very end, the doctor's like, and that's all I have.
Yeah. So the angels, we already sort of touched on this, but the doctor reveals more that they're an alien race, if that wasn't already obvious, who only moves when nobody's looking at them, and that's their, I guess, biggest. It's a defense system, he says, because they turn to stone when nobody's looking, and you can't really kill stone. I mean, you can break it, right? That was my question. What if you just broke one of the angels? What would happen? But I guess we don't find out.
Not in this story.
But it's also their biggest weakness because they can't look at each other, which is why they always cover their faces.
Yeah. So
you have to wonder how these things even came into existence then. But the doctor says they're almost as old as the universe itself, so probably one of the oldest Doctor Who creatures.
Yeah.
But, there's one right there. They got to keep looking at it.
Yeah.
And the Doctor also reveals that the TARDIS is his time machine and that Sally has the key. The Weeping Angels want the key because it'll give them access to time travel and give them more power or something.
Well,
I don't know.
Because the Weeping Angels feed off of like the potential of someone who they send back in time. He says they can feed off of the time energy in the TARDIS and basically become more powerful than ever. So they find the TARDIS. I wonder
what they want all this power for. Domination or... I don't know.
I don't know. They seem pretty immortal already, so...
Yeah, I mean, what don't they have already? Other than the ability... Other than
love. They don't have the ability to love.
The doctor says they're one of the loneliest species out there.
Yeah. So maybe it is love. I was joking, but maybe it is love. Maybe that's how you defeat them. You just love them.
You just scream love, like in the end of... Wrinkle in Time.
The movie or the book?
The movie. I don't remember. I've read the book, but I don't remember if that's how the book ends.
I don't think that's how the book ends, because I've read the book too, and I'm pretty sure that's not how the book ends. Did you watch the movie?
No, I just spoiled it.
Okay. Probably for the best. Got pretty bad reviews. And I
remember the book being really interesting as a kid.
Yeah.
I really liked the book as a kid.
Yeah. I think most people consider the book unfilmable, which is why when Disney announced this movie, they were like, how are you gonna, what? And I think most people were right. They were like, you didn't really
do it correctly.
Anyway, haven't seen the movie, so I don't know. They get to the TARDIS and they put the key in. They're able to get inside, but then the angels are shaking the box.
Well, there's a tense scene where Larry and Sally are looking at one of the angels, and Sally's like, all right, I'm gonna look for another exit, Larry. Just don't blink. Just keep looking at this. And he's like, oh God, Sally, what are you doing? I'm gonna blink. Come back.
All the doors are locked.
And honestly, didn't seem like Sally was coming back for him.
Sacrifices him to the angels.
I mean, I think during this scene, this was, I think, where you can clearly see the guy who plays Larry is sort of blinking. It's not a close-up on his face or anything, so it's not that bad. But like in story, in universe, this guy does an impressive job of not blinking for like 3 minutes.
I mean,
he does blink like twice, and the angel, I guess this is the slowest weeping angel of all time because he blinks and it's only a few feet away from him, but it doesn't get him.
Yeah, it doesn't move very quickly. And the thing everybody suggests is blinking one eye at a time, which I don't think that would work.
I think it works for a while, but eventually you're gonna close them both at once.
Yeah.
But this was really creepy actually because the angel's just standing there and he blinks and it's like grabbing for his throat when he opens his eyes again. I thought all the stuff with the angels moving was really creepy and really well done, like on a low budget too, because they don't actually have to animate or even move anything.
Yeah.
And the angels themselves, when you actually see their faces, look pretty scary.
I always wondered how they filmed this, if they had people in costumes and just stand still, or if they just made a bunch of statue props and then just replaced them between shots. I've always wondered actually how they did film these scenes.
I mean, it's at least some of the scenes it's a prop, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
The ones where they don't move that much, I guess. But maybe some of the other scenes are props with CG or people with CG. I don't know.
So they get into
something
the TARDIS.
We probably should have looked up, but
yeah.
Well, I didn't. So
I didn't. I meant to, but I forgot. They get into the TARDIS, and the emergency hologram activates.
Yeah, it's in like the basement of the mansion, and the angels are closing in on them, but they get in just in time.
Yeah, the hologram.
There's a light in the basement. It starts flickering on and off, and they're like, "Oh God, oh God!" So
yeah, because if the light goes off, then they can't see the angels, so they can move. And then the hologram's like, I have detected
maybe that's
a trip disc, good for one trip. I don't remember exactly what it was called. Please insert the disc and prepare for your voyage.
Yeah, which is one of the DVDs, obviously, that the Doctor had recorded his message on. But yeah, maybe that's how the Weeping Angels sort of were born or came into existence, I guess, is that they were in total darkness. And, then they realized when they got into the light that they just froze.
Yeah, the Doctor, they try to science away the Doctor's explanation of how the Weeping Angels work. He's like, oh, they're quantum locked. When you look at them, then they become statues. Which, surprisingly enough for the show, is actually, I guess, a somewhat accurate representation of quantum phenomena. Which is... in quantum phenomena, the universe is probabilistic, not deterministic, so it's not determined what will happen, and when you observe something, you basically the wave function collapses and something happens with certain probability, and one thing is more likely to happen than the other, but you don't know what will happen until you actually observe the event. So I was surprised the Doctor Who actually was somewhat scientifically accurate for once.
I mean, I'm pretty sure Stephen Moffat just threw this in and was lucky about that, I guess.
Potentially.
But,
So then the TARDIS starts dematerializing, but it's leaving Sally and Larry behind, and they're like, no, you can't do this to us, Doctor. But turns out he had a plan all along.
Turns out he actually can.
Yeah, it turns out he can, but also he had a plan. Because the angels are on four sides of the box, when the TARDIS dematerializes, the angels are all looking at each other, so they can't move anymore.
Yep. And I mean, again, like, do these things not have peripheral vision or like what? I mean, they're obviously, even with the TARDIS there, they can obviously see each other, but hey, whatever.
Anyway, I was also going to say, Sally's like, they'll never move again. I'm like, that's not true. As soon as another guy comes into this house and like tries to renovate, he'll just move the statues and we go, good again for the angels.
But yeah, that's that. Have we ever seen the TARDIS dematerialize with the people inside not dematerializing?
We've seen the opposite. We've seen it materialize around someone.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense than... We've seen it materialize around the Master's TARDIS.
That too.
But yeah, I don't think we've ever seen the reverse of that. Or like what happens in this story.
If you can materialize it around someone, it makes sense that you can dematerialize it around someone, right?
I guess. Just it stood out because it's not something that's ever really happened before. And even the materializing around something is never... It's only happened a couple times, I think.
Yeah. I guess Stephen Moffat just didn't want to throw in another scene where the Doctor is like, "Hey, what are you guys doing in my TARDIS?" He wanted that cool scene at the end instead, where Sally sees the Doctor a year later and gives him the stuff before it's even happened. He's like, "What the hell?"
Because now it cuts to a year later. Sally and Larry, I guess, saved the DVD store. Although I think we just made up that it was almost going out of business.
Well, they sell antiquities now as well, because Sally likes old stuff.
Oh yeah. Okay. So yeah, wasn't it still a DVD store? I don't even remember.
It was like an antiquities and DVD store, because I remember the sign looked like someone had just printed off something they made in Microsoft Word art. It's like Sparrow Nightingale, rare antiquities and DVDs or something.
It's a strange combination, antiques and DVDs. You know, pick up a DVD or two when you come to buy a priceless antique.
Clock. Yeah, everybody needs a good DVD. Anyway, Larry's like, "Don't you think this is getting in the way of other things?"
Yeah, because Larry sees Sally still obsessing over the pictures of Kathy and obsessing over the Doctor and stuff. And he's like, "Don't you think this is getting in the way of our non-existent love life?"
She's like, "What? No." And he's like, "Oh.
Well, I'm going to go get some milk then." So
Do they live in the store? I felt like this was implying that they live in the back of the store.
Possibly. I mean...
Anyway, so he goes to get some milk, and she sees the Doctor and Martha get out of a taxi, and she runs over, and the Doctor's like, "I don't know you." And she's like, "Right, of course, you're a time traveler. It hasn't happened for you yet." And he's like,
"Take all these things and make sure you do everything that's written down here."
And then she's like, "Make sure you have this on you when you get stuck in 1969. And he's like, "How am I supposed to know?" Well, in my head, I'm like, how is he supposed to know when he gets stuck in 1969? Does he just have to keep this folder on him at all times from now on until it happens?
Yep.
He's like, "Well, nice to meet you, Sally Sparrow." Martha's like really annoying in this scene. She's like, "Come on, Doctor, come on, we gotta go." And the Doctor's like, "Hang on a minute, I gotta talk with this lady who clearly knows something about my future." She's like, "No, we're going now, Doctor, now."
Yeah, they gotta go do something with the lizard and the three people, and they're holding bows and arrows too.
The Doctor's like, "Yeah, I guess I gotta go. Bye, Sally." And Larry comes up and sees the Doctor and Martha, and he's like, "Whoa."
Whoa, man. And it turns out the Doctor was getting in the way of their apparently now existent love life.
She grabs Larry's hand, and he's kind of confused by this. He's like, "What?"
And that's how it ends. Well, actually, that's not how it ends. That's how it should have ended.
Yeah. Okay, wait.
But then there's this scene of like every statue in London.
It's just like cutting between them with like this really obnoxious photograph effect. It's like, doo, doo, doo. And meanwhile, there's a voiceover from the Doctor going, "Don't blink. Don't even blink. Blink and you're dead." I don't know what
and
this
just to spite him, I blinked. No.
I don't know.
Hey, I don't know what this was. Like, what is this?
What purpose this is supposed to serve? Maybe it's supposed to make you like scared of all the statues in London. In London.
I mean, I don't even just regardless of the whole like what purpose does it serve thing for a second. I don't even know what it is. Like, what exactly am I even looking at here?
It's a montage of statues around London. I guess it's supposed to imply that any statue could be a weeping angel.
Yeah.
Which is something
that's what it was.
The Moth makes. The Moth makes like super, like adds to their character, I guess, later on. I don't know.
I don't think it necessarily even adds or detracts anything. It's just something there that doesn't really need to be there.
I think it's just designed to try to scare you. "Oh, spooky, any statue in London could be an angel, don't blink." Doesn't really work at all. Doesn't land, because it just feels really weird and out of place.
Yeah, it does. So, I mean, another ending narration that just...
like Lost Weeks.
Yeah.
Kind of weird that they did it 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, with two different writers nonetheless.
Anyway, yeah, still a good story. Like I said back in 42, I think 42 was the start of a run of really strong episodes, which is... my memory appears to have been accurate.
Yeah, it's pretty true so far.
And yeah, I still don't think that this would be a good first episode to show someone to get them into Doctor Who. I mean, you could show it to them early on in their Doctor Who run. I think that would work. I just don't think as a first episode it works very well, just because it's not really Doctor Who. And that's part of the reason why I actually think it works pretty well, is because it's not Doctor Who. I think a lot of the times the episodes we like a lot are the episodes that aren't quote unquote traditionally Doctor Who, I guess. Like, I don't know.
I don't necessarily agree with that. For my, like, favorites, I guess. 42, I think, is the only one that I put in my like absolute top tier of stories that doesn't really necessarily feel too Doctor Who like.
I don't know.
And even then, it sort of does.
In general, I think I just prefer things that keep the spirit of what they're doing, but kind of break the mold. Like, like this episode, it keeps the spirit of Doctor Who, but it's not like it's not in the traditional format of a Doctor Who episode. It's not like the Doctor shows up, there's a problem, there's a resistance group to the tyrannical leader, the Doctor helps the resistance group, and then he leaves, right?
But I mean, then, like, what is, like, the spirit of Doctor Who, right? Because, like, it's changed so, like, the first Doctor and, to an extent, second Doctor era are very different than, like, the third Doctor era than the fourth Doctor era. And, well, once the fourth Doctor hits, it sort of, I don't know, baselines itself, I guess.
It baselines himself when JNT takes over, because I think he just burns himself out really quickly. I don't know. I feel like maybe it's more of an era-breaking thing than a whole show-breaking thing, because obviously this and like something say Robot are very different. Yeah. City of Death, which is one of my favorite Doctor Who stories of all time, and this are like really different from each other. But, the City of Death breaks from the Fourth Doctor's era more than it breaks from the whole show, so to speak. Really,
I guess I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore.
I mean, it's also like why I liked part of the reason why I liked The Lost Jedi is because it's a Star Wars movie, but it's not like it doesn't feel like, say, the prequels. All the prequels feel like the same. The Lost Jedi breaks the mold, in my opinion.
Well, and all three
does something different.
All three trilogies sort of have their own separate feelings. I don't know. They just the prequels are very different than the originals, and then the sequel trilogy that we're now getting is very different from either of those two things.
But like people will be like, oh, I don't know. It just annoys me when people there's a certain way to make a Star Wars movie, and you have to make a Star Wars movie that way, and that's why I like Rogue One and Lost Jedi, because they just completely ignore that statement that there's a way you have to make a Star Wars movie.
I mean, on the other hand, you don't have to like everything that they put out. I mean, I know what I've seen of the Han Solo movie. I already know I'm not, it's not something that I'm interested in. Maybe it'll surprise me and I'll like it, but chances are I won't. And, but I think that's all right. If you don't like everything they do, a lot of people hate the prequels too, whereas I love them. So, I mean, maybe Star Wars I guess we're completely talking about something different now, but maybe Star Wars is expanded enough now, as I guess with Doctor Who, to give different people different things that they like and just other things that they're just not going to like.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I was just trying to make a point of how I like things that kind of break the mold. The same thing for like Mission Impossible. Every Mission Impossible movie, well, except for the new one, was directed by a different director. So they all feel like they're part of the same story, but they feel very different from each other, and I enjoy that. So,
well, I mean, like I mentioned before, I would show this to someone as a first episode of Doctor Who, and basically just because of the TARDIS reveal thing. I think that's actually a great way to introduce someone to what the TARDIS is. Probably a far better way than either Rose or Unearthly Child did.
I think Unearthly Child did it pretty well because...
Well, okay, yeah, maybe...
Because they're in that junkyard, and it's very cramped.
I don't know.
You see Susan go into the junkyard, but then you don't see her anywhere in the junkyard, and you're like, where is she? And then they go into the TARDIS, and it's this very spacious thing inside this really cramped junkyard, and you're like, oh, what's going on? How does that even work? Like, is that where Susan went? So,
but would you show someone now an Unearthly Child to get them to watch the rest of Doctor Who? My answer to that is no, because it would probably make them not watch anything else from Doctor Who.
Yeah, because it was made in the 60s. It's not that I wouldn't show them because of that reveal or anything. I wouldn't show it to them because it was made in the 60s, actually, and because it's kind of boring other than that.
I take that back. I'd show them the first episode, but I wouldn't show them the other three.
Yeah, that's probably what I would do too. Just skip all skip that part where the Doctor tries to kill that Neanderthal, I guess, and Ian has to stop him.
And the old woman.
Yeah, skip all that. skip all that.
No, you gotta show them the Kalinza intrigue. No.
No, you really don't. You really don't.
Anyway, yeah, like I mentioned, I would also show them something else, because I totally agree that this is not representative of anything else from Doctor Who except what I learned over my summer vacation. But maybe this is an indication that once Stephen Moffat becomes more of a prominent figure in decisions made, or becomes a showrunner, I guess, and makes more decisions for the show, maybe it'll start getting more time, or start incorporating time travel.
Yes.
A lot more. All right.
Sometimes to a fault. Anyway, yeah, this definitely, I think there are definitely plot elements in this that Stephen Moffat will reference and or just straight up steal again for some of his later stories.
Wait a minute, didn't Stephen Moffat do Curse
the empty child and the Doctor Dances?
No, the parody thing, the Curse of Fatal Death or whatever it was.
Yeah,
and that one had a lot of weird time travel-ish stuff too, even though it was just a parody.
Yeah.
Huh. It's interesting.
So you can start to notice a pattern, I think. Obviously, the empty child and the Doctor Dances don't really fit that pattern of using really time travel-y stuff, although Jack is from the future.
Oh yeah, Jack comes back next week. I spoiled long ago, like early into season 2, that Jack was coming back, and yeah, it just hadn't happened until now.
The preview spoils it,
yeah,
which is dumb.
Well, I mean, I knew it was going to be sometime next week for us anyway, because we're watching all three, because we do one story a week, so we're watching all three, and I knew Jack was in Series 3, and he hadn't shown up yet, so it basically has to be next week. But anyway.
Yeah, well, okay, so some people consider next week's to be two separate stories, Utopia, and then Sound of Drums and the Lost of the Time Lords.
Well, the wiki lists it as part 1, 2, and 3, so I think that's what we're doing.
I definitely think you should watch it as one story. I definitely think it's intended to be a three-parter, and I definitely think it works a lot better as a three-parter, especially since the first episode ends on this massive, huge cliffhanger that if you watch them as two stories, it would kind of suck to have to wait or watch them separately. Like, the cliffhanger clearly intends for them to be part of the same story.
All right, well, we're obviously going to watch them all as one story.
Yeah, so we're finishing season 2 next week. 3, I mean, series 3.
Yeah. Finally out of that series 3.
We're finally out of that ditch.
Ditch, yeah.
That ditch that started in series 2
and continued for most of series 3.
Anyway, you can email us at doctor@decadentvegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on Martha.
What?
Your thoughts on Sally Sparrow. Should she have been a companion? Tell us. If you can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable, you can find us on Apple Podcasts and Google Play at Trust Your Doctor. Leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast and follow us on Twitter. And next time we're watching Utopia, The Sound of Drums, and Last of the Time Lords. But until then, the end.